In recent years, the relationship between the United States and Chad has been characterized by cooperation in various areas, including security, counterterrorism, and regional stability. The two nations have collaborated to address shared issues and advance shared interests. There have been phases of military collaboration, humanitarian aid, and diplomatic involvement in the U.S. complicated relationship with Chad. Numerous variables, such as counterterrorism initiatives, regional security concerns, and the advancement of peace in the Sahel region, have impacted U.S. troop deployment in Chad. Lately, U.S. forces have begun leaving Africa. The recent withdrawal of U.S. military personnel from several African nations is the subject of discussion. So, in today's video, we are going to be examining the reasons behind Chad's decision to allow U.S. troops to leave its country and its potential implications. We are also going to see some other countries that have decided to send out U.S. troops. But before we continue, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the New Tourist channel so you are updated on whatever happens in Chad and in Africa as a whole. In a recent turn of events, the U.S. military has withdrawn troops from a French military base in Chad after the country demanded they leave last month. Now, almost half of the U.S. soldiers based at the French military base in N'Djamena, the capital of Chad, have left the country and moved to Germany. Less than 100 U.S. soldiers were reportedly stationed in Chad, most of them being a component of the U.S. Special Operations Task Force, which serves as a major hub for U.S. Special Operations forces in the area. The Special Operations Task Force was previously based in Germany before moving to Chad in 2021. Bear in mind that about 60 U.S. troops left Chad for Germany. The withdrawal was completed on Tuesday, which was the last day of April. According to some news outlets, some U.S. personnel will stay in the country and work out of the U.S. Embassy there, in addition to the Marines who will continue to provide embassy security. Note that the withdrawal of the troops in Chad comes just over a month after the military government of neighboring Niger ended its agreement with the U.S. military that allowed American personnel to operate in the country. U.S. talks are presently centered largely on logistics, such as obtaining authorization for military aircraft to enter and exit the nation to ensure a secure and orderly withdrawal of the more than 1,000 U.S. soldiers who were still present in Niger. The U.S. Deputy Secretary of State, Kurt Campbell, met with Prime Minister Ali Lamine Zain of Niger, and following Niger's demands, they decided that the U.S. will remove its military forces from the nation. There will be discussions with the Department of Defense over the withdrawal schedule in the upcoming days. The huge pullback will have a substantial effect on the number of U.S. troops stationed in Africa, and it comes at a time when the U.S. is gravely concerned about the country's strengthening ties with Iran and Russia. The departure from Chad is the result of threats made by Chadian officials in a letter to the U.S. Defense Attaché last month to revoke the Status of Forces Agreement, which establishes the guidelines and limitations for U.S. military troops stationed there. The letter ordered that all U.S. personnel vacate the French facility in N'Djamena. According to intelligence sources, the letter was sent by Idriss Amin, the Chief of Air Staff of Chad, in an uncommon method for conveying such a big message. The letter was typewritten in French, which is one of Chad's official languages. One of the officials stated that the letter was not issued via formal diplomatic channels, which is the customary procedure for handling such matters. The two sources issued a warning, speculating that the letter would be a bargaining chip used by the Chadian administration to secure a better deal. According to a defense official and additional informed sources, the disagreement is essentially a formality that will probably be settled during Chad's elections, which are currently going on. When considered collectively, however, the events occur at a crucial juncture for U.S. interests in Africa, given the warnings issued by U.S. authorities on Russian influence spreading throughout the continent. Head of U.S. Africa Command and Marine Corps, General Michael Langley, told legislators in March that Central African nations were in a dilemma, needing development aid from countries like China and Russia, but weighing that need against risks to national sovereignty. In January, Langley traveled to Chad with Sergeant Major Michael Woods, AFRICOM's senior enlisted advisor, and spoke with General Abakar Abdelkarim Daoud, the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of Chad. Langley said in the release that AFRICOM remains dedicated to building enduring partnerships with Chad and other African nations. Bear in mind that Chad is following the example set by Niger, attempting to use an opportunity to extract more concessions from the U.S. The decision comes at a crucial moment for U.S. interests in Africa, given that American officials have cautioned that Russian influence is spreading throughout the continent. Last summer, the U.S. troops stationed in Niger became inactive after a military coup that pushed out the democratically elected president, Mohamed Bazoum, and installed the military leaders. It's vital to remember that while ties between the U.S. and African countries differ, not all African countries desire the U.S. to leave. Still, there are a few reasons why this sentiment might be expressed in some African countries. A possible cause is the growing sway of other superpowers, like China, over Africa. China has made large financial contributions to African nations, mostly in the form of trade agreements and infrastructure projects. Due to this, there is a sense that China is more involved in Africa than the U.S., which has caused an imbalance in diplomatic and commercial relations. Russia is another country that is gaining ground in Africa. As part of its approach in Africa, Russia offers mining rights, financial possibilities, diplomatic support for its foreign policy preferences, and security collaborations in exchange for arms sales and political backing to authoritarian authorities. Africa provides a large majority of the votes cast in the General Assembly of the United Nations. Therefore, Russia has found that backing from its African allies has been very crucial in this regard. Russia's military intelligence service is giving governments in Africa a regime survival package that includes military and diplomatic help in exchange for access to strategically valuable natural resources. However, following the withdrawal of U.S. troops from African countries, there are questions about the direction of U.S. counterterrorism efforts in the area. African countries and the U.S. have been working together to fight radical terrorist groups including Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, and ISIS. According to popular belief, these missions cannot take place without U.S. forces. There has been talk about U.S. military deployment in Africa, which is significant to notice. Some claim that U.S. involvement in Africa has centered too much on counterterrorism, overshadowing other important areas like economic and development engagement. The effectiveness of the American military's presence in fighting terrorism and its long-term consequences on regional stability are topics of continuous debate. As all this is happening in Chad, bear in mind that elections are also going on. There are 9 opponents for General Mahamat Idris Deby, the transitional president, one of whom is his current prime minister. So far, the election that was supposed to bring an end to the 3 years of military rule has been quiet. The prohibition against photographing election results sheets at voting places, however, is causing friction. As early as 5:30 a.m. local time, hundreds of people began showing up at polling places in N'Djamena, the capital of Chad. Chad's transitional president, General Mahamat Idris Deby, voted in N'Djamena's 2nd district and pleaded with civilians to go out en masse and perform their civic duty of voting for the person who will manage Chad's affairs for the next 5 years. Chad has been experiencing political turmoil since interim President Mahamat Idris Deby first took office in 2021, amid vehement opposition forces' objections to his legitimacy. The turmoil reached a peak when government soldiers shot and terminated Yaya Dillo, one of the most powerful opposition members, and his supporters at their party headquarters in the capital, N'Djamena, in February. Chad, with its 17 million people, is among the poorest nations in the world, with at least 40% of them living below the poverty line. More than 500,000 people have been forced into Chad by the fighting in neighboring Sudan, increasing the pressure even as concerns about a conflict spreading there are still there. Reportedly one of the greatest in the region, Chad's army wields influence throughout the unstable Sahel, where a series of coups and armed group incursions have weakened the position of Western powers like France and the U.S. and caused regional rifts. However, note that a second round of votes is expected on June 22, with provisional results due on July 7. One thing to note is that Chad has the same right as any other sovereign nation to determine whether or not foreign armed forces are present within its borders. However, it's critical to understand the potential consequences of this decision. The U.S. military's presence in Chad has historically been crucial to maintaining regional stability and combating terrorism. As a result, the possible effects on regional security and stability should be thoroughly considered before making any decisions about the withdrawal of these forces. The withdrawal of U.S. troops from the base in Chad signifies a dramatic change in the direction of American foreign policy. Concerns have been voiced concerning this action's potential effects on Chad's security and stability, as well as the U.S. continued presence in the region. The departure emphasizes the shifting dynamics in the area and the dynamic character of international relations, even while it may also be viewed as a calculated strategic decision to reallocate resources and concentrate on other global concerns. The decision represents a reevaluation of the U.S. military involvement in Chad with the country's capabilities and the need for a more long-term strategy for security in mind. However, worries about a possible power vacuum and destabilization have also been raised by the U.S. forces' withdrawal from Chad. The international community must keep a careful eye on the situation and assist Chad in its endeavors to guarantee a smooth transition and uphold stability. Do you think U.S. troops withdrawing from Chad at a time when elections are going on is a good move? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the New Tourist channel. Turn on notifications too so you get notified whenever we upload videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you in our next video.